Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Layton Fitness podcast. With regards to today's episode, in my opinion, probably is one of the most important because what I'm going to share with you in today's episode is by far one of the keys to actually making consistent fat loss or muscle gain progress. However, it's not easy and 99% of people will not do this. I really strongly suggest you listen all the way through to the end of the episode and actually start applying this. Even if you don't apply everything I teach you in this episode, it's worth just applying something because this one thing will increase your results without question. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. It isn't particularly sexy, but it's so important. That is tracking progress. And that's not necessarily tracking progress in terms of your lifts in the gym, but it's also progress in terms of tracking your food intake, in addition to tracking your body weight, tracking your body fat percentage if it's available to you, using pictures, using measurements, essentially measuring your body composition changes. This is so important, and the reason why it's so important is because if you're not doing this, you're merely guessing. If you're just one of the people that goes into the gym 3 to 6 times a week, lifts heavy and eats quote unquote clean, you don't really know how much food intake you're actually consuming, how many calories, macronutrients you're actually consuming. Are you actually improving the lifts from previous weeks? Are you slowly adding more volume if your goal is muscle growth? You don't really know if you're actually making fat loss progress. That's why trying to get away from this subjective mindset and start being more measurable, objective will without question make a significant improvement. Just measurement alone will improve results whether you're focusing on improving body composition or whether you're an elite athlete. Just measurement alone improves performances. The one really important principle I want to impress upon you today is nutrition and training requirements are ever changing. Therefore, we need to consistently manipulate these variables subject to your progress, and the key there is subject to your progress. Unless you're actually measuring all of these variables, you don't know how to make changes. Going back to the first point, it's ever changing. It's not just put something in place and that will be what's required to get you to your fat loss goals. So for example, if your goals are fat loss and initially start on X calories and X macronutrients, these are going to be needed to be changing subject to your progress. As you become leaner, more than likely these calories are going to be reduced and or increasing energy expenditure via cardio. So that's one good example. And the same for muscle growth. You're consistently trying to add more volume to your sessions to slowly increase calories, mainly in the form of carbohydrates. Again, it wasn't just we put something in place and that was what was needed to get you to your goals. So it needs to be constantly ever changing. And what we're going to be talking about mainly in this episode is just a brief overview of things to start tracking, and just start tracking these alone, seeing your progress, and then you'll be able to make manipulations from there. And I'd also suggest looking back at some of my previous episodes where I talk more specifically about some of the changes needed to move you closer to either your fat loss or muscle gain goals. So things that's so useful to track. First thing, bring a notepad to the gym. Start actually tracking your weight. Start tracking your sets. Start tracking your repetitions. I know you're going to say, I can hear you saying already, I can remember what I did, but no one can really remember exactly everything they did in that previous session. Here's a good example. Just say if you did a certain weight on one week and then the following week you know you need to increase the load on the bar, or you know you found it more difficult and you think, one more week on that same weight before progressing. Having a notepad, writing these numbers and then potentially adding little notes next to each of your sets can be very useful. Again, so we can be objective and start making changes when required. Another thing you could measure is total volume. So, as discussed for some other episodes, it's sets times reps times load is total volume. And this, for the most part, is one of the primary influencing factors for hypertrophy, with the caveat that the load's heavy enough. So it's certainly something that's useful to track. This should be going up over a chronic period of time. As I mentioned at the start of the the podcast food intake, start tracking your calories, macronutrients. This is the key to changing body composition. I'd suggest using the free application called MyFitnessPal, and you can download this on your phone. However, I wouldn't use the generic figures given to you on MyFitnessPal. So basically they have protein way too low. I think it's on government guidelines, which is not tailored for us trained individuals. Therefore, I'd go to my website, jameslayton, Layton fitness.co.uk, and you can download my free ebook. Go to the top of the page, click free ebook, and this ebook essentially teaches you how to set calories, macronutrients, and also how to manipulate these to move you closer to your goals. Obviously, these formulas have limitations. However, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, there's more about putting something in place, measuring your progress, and then making changes from there. So I'd essentially plug these figures into MyFitnessPal, and it's a really great application. I use it with all of my clients. Don't get me wrong, there's a few discrepancies on there, but for the most part it's very good. So another thing, let's start actually measuring the body composition changes. So if you have access to a calipers, body fat calipers, that would be ideal. If you don't, not to worry, because you can still use other tools and get a good guide of whether you're making progress or not. So one thing, start using pictures, start weighing yourself using body weight. Very simple. Another one is measurements. Get a tape measure, measure girth measurements around chest, shoulders, arms, across your stomach, legs, hips if you're a female. These are really good indicators of whether you're making progress or not. Same with the photos. I really do suggest you do this, because quite often body fat percentage, the scale, weight, all the measurements don't do you justice. But seeing the visual changes, try and do this perhaps once a week in similar lighting, similar circumstances, e.g. you're not just going one day first thing in the morning and the other day after a whole day's food intake, so similar timings. This will really give you an objective view. And with regards to a lot of these measuring tools, the body fat percentage calipers is a great example, because some of you probably say, oh, they're not 100% accurate. I'd agree with you. However, it's more about measuring the net change. So even if it is slightly inaccurate initially, if we're using the same tool every single week, we'll be able to get a honest, accurate net difference on a weekly basis. So hopefully that makes sense. Another quick caveat with regards to body weight in females. This can be somewhat of a difficult measuring tool, purely because of their menstrual cycles. Obviously at certain times of the month they'll be holding more water than others. Therefore, potentially we can measure an individual on the scale when they're holding more water and then they're not at another time. So there's just something to consider. I do still have my female clients weigh themselves. However, I always make sure they understand what's really going on with their body. That's why we have more than one measuring tool available to us, so therefore we can be ultimately more objective. So that's just a quick caveat there. So once you've got all these variables in place, so we're tracking our training, we're using that notepad in the gym, we're tracking weight, reps, sets, potentially volume. We're also tracking our food intake via MyFitnessPal. We've used our ebook, and we're also measuring our body composition changes. So pictures, body weight, measurements, body fat percentage, if this is available to you. I'd suggest starting with this once a week. You can do this more frequently, and so for example you could potentially weigh yourself every day and then come up with a 7-day average, which can be very useful because of certain water fluctuations throughout the week, when perhaps you're having more sodium at certain times within the week. So that can be a useful tool as well, but for most of you, once a week will be a good starting point. And then from there, we're really focusing on making changes to either nutritional training subject to your progress. So as I stated before in some of my other previous episodes, if you don't make progress and your goal is fat loss, and you've stuck to everything perfectly, the weight training, if you're doing any cardio, and the food intake, start making a change. So you could either add more expenditure via more cardio, or potentially you could decrease calories slightly by 5 to 10%, mainly from carbohydrates and fats. And whether you go from the higher end, 10% or 5%, will really depend on how lean you are. A leaner individual, I'd focus on the lower end, 5%, and for someone with more body fat, you can focus on the higher end. But these aren't black and white figures, and it really depends on a lot of variables. For example, how long you've been dieting for, when the deadline is to get to a certain level of leanness, because obviously ultimately that time frame will dictate how aggressive you potentially need to be with the energy deficit. Measuring your progress can also be a useful tool for knowing when to take a deload weeks. As I discussed before, that deload week can be very useful for intermediate and advanced trainees who either use deloads in a scheduled manner, perhaps every 4th week, 6th week, 8th week, 12 weeks, or they use an auto-regulation approach where essentially take the deload when required. And by measuring your progress within the gym, this can be relatively easy to see when this is needed. And just final applications and conclusions. Now it's a case of just keep repeating the cycle, measuring the progress, deciding whether you need to make a change or not, putting that change in place, whether that's, say for instance, fat loss, more cardio or dropping calories. Then you're going to measure your progress again. Are you making progress? If you are, keep doing the same. If you're not, you can make another change. It's constantly a cycle of putting something in place, measuring your progress, and then making manipulations from there. However, the majority of people won't do this. I really do strongly recommend, even if you took a few of these and started doing them, but I really recommend doing all of them, because once you've got that habit in place, things become so much more easier to get results because you're tracking all of the variables. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you're still yet to download my free ebook, if you go to jameslaytonfitness.co.uk and essentially if you click on the top of the page called free ebook, you can download that immediately, and that will teach you how to set calories, macronutrients, and how to manipulate these variables to move you closer to your fat loss or muscle gain goals. So thank you very much for listening, guys. I'll look forward to speaking to you next week.